All right, the big pay-per-view this week, the big card that everyone talks about at the moment is UFC 244. It's coming to us out at Madison Square Garden in New York, and joining me as he does on a monthly basis, fresh off a win in UFC 233. Dan, first of all, shot. That was awesome.
Yeah, not bad. Not a bad night at the office, if I don't say so myself.
And good for the gym. Good for your crew.
Yeah, 3-0 on the on a stage like that. It's pretty incredible. Co-main event, headline, get the job done. Fight of the night as well. It doesn't get much better than that.
It's a bit of a mic drop for City Kickboxing, eh? Just storming Melbourne. See ya. Take the cash.
On to the next one.
Let's have a look at this fight card. Everyone's saying what a fantastic card it is, and I've just written down all the prices actually, and for the TAB odds, it's pretty even. I mean, the roughest price in the whole night is still under $3, so good even matches. So let's crack into them with Julio against Hakeem Dawodu. $1.70 Hakeem is the favourite here, but again, there's not a lot in this.
Yeah, Hakeem. So they're both strikers, first off. I just feel like Dawodu carries a bit more power than us leading into this one. They're both very classy strikers on good runs. I've picked against Dawodu the last 3 fights now, and he's proven me wrong all 3 fights. So this time, I'm going to change my tune, and I'm picking Dawodu in this one. I feel like he has the power advantage in the striking. So yes, I'm picking Hakeem. I feel like he's not going to knock him out because Us is another classy striker, but he has enough power to threaten, to control the fight and take it to decision.
Decision there to Dawodu. Lyman Good, slight favourite against Chance. Rencontre, I'm going to guess.
Yep.
Are you going to go recounter?
However you want to say it. This is an interesting fight. This is probably a lot of unanswered questions leading into this one. There's a lot of names, top to bottom. This card is pretty stacked, but this is one of the more unknown. Lyman Good, I'm pretty familiar with. He was the first ever welterweight Bellator champion. And then since then moved over to the UFC. He did serve he was on a good run. I believe it was a 2-fight win streak in the UFC, and then he got popped by USADA. Spent 2 years on the sidelines, and then he's 1 win, 2 losses since coming back from that. Rencontre, he took a short notice fight against Belal Muhammad, and was I think it was only 1 or 2 weeks, so very little time to prepare for such a strong wrestler like Belal Muhammad. Lost that fight, but since then I believe it's a 2-fight win streak. I'm actually backing the pressure of Chance leading into this fight. You know, Lyman Good, he's got long reach. He does good at range, but Chance, I believe, is just going to kind of come forward and put the pressure on, and Lyman Good just doesn't seem to deal that well with someone that's continually trying to wrestle and continually trying to put the pressure on him. So I'm going Chance by a decision.
And when you say decision, it don't always mean decision. That means you think it's going to be close. So.
Yeah. It's hard to pick. Like when I say, if I pick knockout or submission, it's like someone has a pretty big advantage in one area. But I feel like this is going to be close.
First of the women fights, he's a great name too, isn't it? Kaitlynn Chook again against Jennifer Meyer. $1.58, warmish favourite to Kaitlynn.
Yeah, so this fight kind of shows how stacked that this card is. I believe Chookagian's the second ranked flyweight woman strawweight of flyweight in the world, and then Meyer's number 6. So to have number 2 versus 6 in the third fight of the night
in the prelims
just shows you like the strength of the card. Again, 2 strikers. Meyer, I think, carries the power advantage, hits a little harder. Chookagian is a bit of a point fighting decision specialist though, and I feel like she just cruises to the decision in that one.
Then we go to Andrei Arlovski against someone by the name of Rosenstruck. Again, and Rosenstruck it's not a warm favourite, but he's not a short favourite, somewhere in between there.
Yeah, well, he's undefeated. I think he's 8-0. He's a Surinamese. So Suriname and the Dutch have like a very strong connection. So he's probably spent a lot of time in the Netherlands training kickboxing, and he's a striker. Carries a lot of power. But this is Arlovski, I believe, like 4 of his last 5 fights have been against powerful strikers like Tai Tuivasa, and guys that come out and are known to just take your head off. And he's done a very good job of shutting them down and making it a very slow fight and really threatening them to not let their power go. Very experienced guy, Andrei Arlovski, has a terrible chin, but he has the advantage of knowing that. And so he avoids exchanges. You know, he's not like a young heavyweight who comes in like undefeated and he's got no fear of getting knocked out.
Like
I think he's been, like Tai Tuivasa. Arlovski, I think he's been knocked out 13 times. Like he's been knocked out a lot of times. There was like 5 knockouts in a row or 6 knockouts in a row that he had. But very good at shutting down power strikers. I know this heavyweight kid, Rosenstruck's undefeated and he's coming in hot. But I feel like Andrei Arlovski has the tools to shut him down and control the fight.
Because the big guys don't often go the distance, do they?
Not often. You know, I think most of Rosenstruck's wins are via knockout. He just hasn't been tested against the level of competition that Andrei Arlovski's had.
Then we go Brad Tavares against Edmund Shabazz, who find this is, I think, looking at a second closest price, so a bit of a coin flip this fight.
This is a good fight. I'm excited for this fight. Obviously, Brad Tavares for Israel, and Israel made him look pretty ordinary. I just feel like Brad hasn't been evolving with the game in his recent fights. Like even he's had some success since then, but he hasn't looked to evolve his game. Like he's a pretty basic striker. Doesn't look for the takedown. Hasn't really changed anything about his game. And this young kid coming in, he's Shabazz. He's undefeated as well, 10-0. And he's looked impressive in the UFC, and he's looked very well-rounded. I believe like 8 or 9 of those 10 wins are via knockout. Wow. So he carries some power, but then in his last fight against Jack Marshman, he used his wrestling well, and he controlled the fight and shut a powerful striker down and didn't engage with him. So he shows a pretty complete game, and of any prospect in any division, I've got my eyes on this kid, and I feel like he's really sharp. I feel like he puts Brad Tavares away. I'm going to go via knockout.
Yeah, he's our first knockout of the night. Shortest price favourite on the card for the night is in the next fight, Shane Burgos against Makwan
Amir Kearney.
Amir Kearney. Yeah, that's a great name, but big underdog.
Yeah. Oh, I'm pretty surprised about that. I thought it was. I thought that fight would be a bit closer. Shane Burgos, real good striker. He had a battle of the prospects against Kelvin, and it was an awesome fight. He lost that fight. I believe he was stopped in the 3rd round, but he's come back and won fights since then. I think it's a 2 or 3 fight win streak. Amir Kearney, I believe his only loss in the UFC was to another young prospect, and he's on another good streak as well himself. So there's 2 hot prospects coming in to see who's going to kind of advance to that next level. Amir Kearney, very little striking in any of his fights. He loves to get the takedown and control from the top position and look for submissions. Shane Burgos, very strong defensive wrestler, very strong boxer, and it's some incredible striking. I'm backing Shane Burgos' takedown defense in this one. And once he stuffs the takedown repeatedly of Amir Kearney, I think he just beats him up on the feet. Yeah, I feel this is going to be a long night for Amir Kearney. I actually think Shane will stop him in the 2nd round once he just starts chucking him around from the wrestling. So I'm going Burgos for a KO.
Burgos KO. Card's heating up. You know I love my names. Corey Anderson, New Zealand Black Caps, all-rounder, taking on the inventor of whiskey, Johnny Walker. But in all seriousness, it is a serious fight at the 205-pound weight division. $1.61, Johnny Walker, $2.20, Corey Anderson.
Wow.
Your eyes lit up.
They're not backing. They're not backing Corey Anderson. There's a lot of question marks in this fight. There's a lot of question marks. Johnny Walker, purely because we haven't seen him wrestle, because he just keeps knocking people out so fast. There's a lot of question marks in his game, like how he wrestles, how he deals with being taken down, how he deals with a longer fight, because he's 3-0 in the UFC and he's knocked everyone out. Corey Anderson, he's on a 3-fight win streak against some, Ali Latifi, against good named guys. He's on a 3-fight win streak. But he has shown a propensity in the past to getting knocked out in fights that he's winning. Jimmy Manuwa knocked him out. He was knocked out again. I forget the name. But yeah, so that's where the question mark comes down to. Corey Anderson, without a doubt, is a better wrestler than Johnny Walker.
If he gets a chance to wrestle.
But Johnny Walker's explosiveness is... I'm going to go with the hot prospect. I don't usually do that in this kind of fight. I would usually back the proven veteran with the wrestler. But Johnny Walker, I think he's onto something. And he's the next prospect in that light heavyweight division. Walker KO.
I've written KO even before you beat me to it. Kevin Lee, we've talked about before in previews. Really important fight for him, this one, against Gregor Gillespie. He's an underdog at 230, but could be a bit of a crossroads fight for Kevin Lee.
Yeah, it's a stupid fight for him. He's ranked higher than Gillespie. He's going to go backwards to fight him. Hot, young, undefeated prospect, which potentially has better wrestling than Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee is a wrestler. But again, Gregor Gillespie, undefeated, 4-0 in the UFC, 4 or 5-0 in the UFC, but hasn't really competed against strong competition. This is his first real test. He beat some pretty good fighters. Vince Pichel, he's a dangerous guy, dangerous striker. Yancy Medeiros, he outgrappled. But again, these are not elite level competition. Those are strikers who have holes in their game. Kevin Lee is a very strong wrestler, strong striker. He's very well rounded. His only issues have really been in his ability to control the pace of the fight and when to pull back. He kind of just, when he's winning, he just runs with it and sprints to the finish line and gasses himself out. But I'm going with Kevin Lee because I feel like he's got a proven history against very top level competition. I just feel like Gregor Gillespie hasn't been tested yet and doesn't have the experience yet to compete with a fighter like Kevin Lee.
UFC 244, Madison Square Gardens, New York. We're down to the last 4 fights. Derrick Lewis, I feel like he's on every UFC card. He just keeps on rolling. A slight underdog against the big Bulgarian Blachowicz Ivanov.
Yeah, Blachowicz Ivanov made his debut against Junior Dos Santos. Lost the decision there, but then from then he's gone on to win his last 2 or 3. Beat Taito Ivasa. And Blachowicz, the Bulgarian, he's trained out at AKA, has good takedown defense, but very unlikely that Derrick Lewis is going to attempt any takedowns. He comes out and he's pretty reckless. Blachowicz he's a counter puncher and he's a counter striker. Derrick Lewis hates a boring fight. He will jump in just for the sake of jumping in with some crazy stuff. And I feel like Blachowicz is just too defensively responsible to get in a wild exchange with Derrick Lewis, where Derrick Lewis gets a lot of his knockouts. I'm going Blachowicz via decision. I feel like he just picks Derrick Lewis apart.
Another decision in the big boys' ranks. Yeah, interesting. Stephen Thompson, a slight favourite again against Vicente Luque at $2.08. Reasonably big boys as well, 170 pounders.
Yeah, so Vicente Luque, he's on an incredible run. His last fight was against Mike Perry. He blew Mike Perry's nose off. That was pretty impressive. Stephen Thompson, I believe this is his first fight back since his knockout loss to Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis, in a fight, I felt like Stephen Thompson was winning. Got a bit overzealous and was knocked out. Vicente Luque, again, hasn't shown that much versatility in his striking. He's a striker. Stephen Thompson is a striker. Vicente Luque does his best work pressuring forwards with his boxing, but Stephen Thompson does his best work going backwards and cutting angles and running someone into something. I just feel like the kicking game of Stephen Thompson is a bit too classy, and Stephen Thompson picks him apart at range, controls the cage, and takes the decision.
2 to go, and boy, 2 epic fights to round out the night. Kelvin Gastelum, who was in that war with Izzy, fight of the year, everyone seems to agree with, against a real tough rooster in Darren Till.
Yeah, very interesting fight. You know, Darren Till actually nagged for this fight. You know, he got his team to approach the UFC with this fight. The UFC said, no, we're not interested in that fight, but he kept pestering the UFC to get this fight made. You know, this is Darren Till's first fight in the middleweight division, and he picks out a guy in Kelvin Gastelum who's he's no easy first road into a new weight class. Darren Till coming off 2 knockouts, 2 knockout losses, switching division. Obviously, they see something. But physically, in what I've seen, you know, him up a middleweight, he doesn't look to have had the time to develop the strength and his body in the new weight class. I feel like it's too much too soon coming up to the weight class and taking on Kelvin Gastelum. I feel like Kelvin's too fast, and Darren Till won't be able to use his size to kind of bully someone around the cage in this. Gastelum has the speed advantage and the wrestling advantage, which will make it hard for Darren Till to pressure forwards onto him. I'm backing Gastelum with the KO.
And especially someone that hung that close with Israel, and we know how good Israel is, that even though it's a loss, it's still got to be a tick in his ability column, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was an incredibly close contest. You know, they rocked each other. That was a razor thin fight. Darren Till's not Israel Adesanya. No. You know, their striking is, I don't think, is on the same level. You know, so, and for Kelvin to do something like that against Israel, that's why I'm really backing him.
One that you'll be particularly interested in, Jorge Masvidal against Nate Diaz, the main event of the evening. Masvidal is the favourite, and it's really polarised. Nate Diaz, people love him or absolutely hate him. He's got that real mongrel dog about him. I quite like watching him. He's a gun. He's a pro, and he's smarter than what people think, I think, as well. Yeah,
that's why this one's such a tough pick for the fans, because they both attract the same kind of, same, there's a lot of things online that like a civil war has begun between Masvidal fans. If you know me, you know I've been a Masvidal fan for a very long time, but obviously respect the skill set that Nate Diaz brings to the table. But in terms of this fight, it'll be a striking fight. I think we know that. Nate Diaz would like to get it on the ground, but Masvidal is an incredibly strong defensive wrestler. I don't feel like Nate has the wrestling to drag Masvidal to the ground. I feel like Masvidal is, you know, he's had a very strong game plan against Damian Maia, even though he was beaten in that fight. But, you know, he's done very well against wrestlers throughout his career. So if we're talking a striking fight, Masvidal, I feel like he has the boxing advantage over Nate Diaz. And for most of his career, he's been able to pick people apart from range. And then recently, he's been getting the big knockouts. People fall into the Diaz trap of gassing themselves, hitting him in the face, and then he drags him into deep water and drowns them. But Masvidal is not the kind of fighter to burn himself out beating someone up. I feel like Masvidal picks Nate Diaz apart in this fight. He controls the fight fairly easily, but because Nate's so tough, Nate's so strong, I feel like this goes to decision, but I feel like this is a very one-sided whooping.
And before we head off, you fought in 243. This is 244.
This is the 500th UFC event.
Oh, there you go. What number will you be fighting in next, do you think? What would you like to fight?
It won't be a number. I don't think it's going to be a number. I think it's going to be UFC in New Zealand. It'll be a fight night. I'm just waiting on the date. I'm just waiting on it's a rumbling. They're not going to tell me because then I'll just tell everyone.
Yeah. You got loose lips.
I got loose lips, and the UFC know that. So they like avoid the PR people over here and set up a media day, and they're just like, I was like, when's the event? They were just like, not telling you. But yeah, so there's rumblings that'll happen. You know, everything's
because they're talking February-ish, aren't they?
Yeah, from what I believe. You know, even I've talked to a few of the referees because I think they've talked to the referees, but none of them will tell me. Like no one's telling me anything.
You got a reputation.
I got a reputation. If she would have told me, oh, they're thinking February 20, I would have just been like, February 20, UFC, I'm announcing it.
It's on Twitter. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I would have already put it out. So they're probably going to tell me. They'll probably tell me when they tell you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll keep February clear, and hopefully we'll see you and Kai and all the other guys on the card. It's just going to be a hell of a day in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, man. We could stack this thing out with New Zealand fighters, which is pretty incredible.
Awesome, Dan. Again, congrats on your win a month ago. Great win. I know you're back full training now.
Yep.
Long way till February, but I feel sorry for the bloke that draws you if it's in New Zealand.
Yeah. Pretty hard man to beat on this side of the world.
Go well. Thanks, mate.
Thanks.